Alrighty, week to learn together. So I at this point in the semester, we're in the first week, and I have reviewed a couple of you who have submitted the learn together for week one. So I don't have a lot of code to review or a lot of comments to make about that yet. But do know, and you're going to see this, that this is a smaller class. And honestly, I've reached out to almost most of you. Some of you I already knew had come in from my 93 class. But if you didn't, I actually reached out to you and said, hey, it's my recommendation. Don't take 93 JavaScript beginning on the client side with this class. And so that's why this class is smaller. Um, and I chuckle a little bit because it's like, yeah, I knew I would hurt the enrollment, but I felt it was a better situation and ability to succeed for students. The reason I'm mentioning this is it goes right along with one of the two things I'm going to have you do this week. Is that, it's hoped that you have some JS knowledge coming in. And I actually, my write-up put assume, but some of you actually have had other programming languages. I think most of you have had some JS. So what I want you to do is this, and I actually spent a little time looking out there because I was curious once I started thinking about this topic of how many of you actually can give me I am beginner, I am intermediate, I am more advanced. I have used in the past, and this is not one I'm going to recommend right now, although I think it's a good one. Pluralsight offers a way to check your IQ level, and an IQ in this case specific to these technologies. So you could check that one out as well. But I want you to look around. There was one on W3 School. The one thing, and that's a fine one. I've seen other people reference that one, and I went through it myself, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay. One of the things I don't like, and this is, you're going to hear this and Andrew will mention this some, but like one of the ways I know if somebody has modern JavaScript is when I look at their code, they're no longer using var to declare variables. We're trying to move away from var for various reasons. And so using let and const makes much more sense and moves us towards a more, and I can't say strongly typed. And what I mean by that is JavaScript at its nature is dynamically typed. But again, I'm not going to venture too far off because hopefully you already have some of this knowledge. But what I want you to do is find one of those quizzes out on the web. I was going to say which one I wanted you to take, but I decided, no, I'm going to let you choose. Not only that, I may find some I didn't know about, which would be cool. And you can take it, right? And then you don't have to share your results. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to. More talk about, like, were you surprised? Do you feel like it was a good assessment? And where do you feel like your basic JavaScript knowledge is? Okay? So that's the first part. And do on your reply, give it some kind of heading, right? So because again, there's two parts to this. Okay, so for the second part, we're actually going to, and I'm just going to scroll this up a little bit here. I want us to build together an email app, right? And think about, so here's what I want you to know. For this class, and I've talked about this once, you are going to have 3 times this semester where you actually have to build something based on what we're learning. So what I want to do is give us just more experience from what you've already been exposed to, okay, from the Node.js course. And so what I want us to do for this first part, right, is just look at what we've learned, right, and build out the beginnings based on what we've learned in this first section, section 3, about Node.js, about the way you modularize your code. You expose your modularized code. In this case, I'm going to have you write a function. You use, and actually I should have said first, and this is something I was kind of doing here, is you set up a new package.json file by running npm init. And I'm going to tell you, anytime we set up a new folder, and there'll be various times, especially when you do the develop it, that you will make sure you run that npm init. So that's just standard practice anytime we're moving to either creating a new folder, either in the public or in the private, right? Install chalk and validator. And again, understanding how that package.json works, how the node modules is only used, right? If you pull code off of GitHub or other places, right, you'll have to run npm install to actually load that locally. So understanding that process is really an important part of writing Node. And then installing chalk and validator, right? And then and you'll create, and I'll show you real quick. I actually have at least the base. I'm not going to show you my email.js file, because this is the file I want you to spend a little time on your own attempting to do, right? But the idea that you have, and that's why, by the way, that knowing, making sure in the git ignore that you have told it not to track the modules. Oh, and that's, look, I didn't. So I actually need to do that, right? So don't do node modules. I had done that with you guys, and then I forgot to do it for myself. Okay. So let me do that real quick. So I'll have to version control that and make sure I get that in there. But in this case, you can see I set up the directory, and I want you to set it up in public, learn together, email app. By the way, the reason it shows up like this is until you've put a file in learn together in the editor, at least in mine, maybe not in yours, but I suspect it might look like this, okay? And then inside of here, create an email, okay, app.js email. And again, that package.json is created when you run the init. And then you're going to require that email file. And then in there, in that email file, which I want you to work on your own, right? Here's where I'm calling it. So I've actually only got one function. Plus, I have placed the require statements for the validator and the chalk in there. And then I've called email, because in this case, it's the function now. Now, when we have multiple functions, we do this a little different. But for this case, I called it, I passed it a sender, a receiver, a title, and a body. So that's what that looks like, right? So that when I run it, and you could do NodeMon here for sure. I use chalk to output, different colors, right? And here's the other thing is, in your function, I want you to handle if either your sender or your receiver email is not valid. And the way I handled that, oh, I could do it there. And actually, that's a perfect case for using NodeMon right there, right? So that whenever you're changing the code, it's automatically outputting. Great use case for that. And understanding that NodeMon is a global versus not in your package.json, because it's just in your global system. Okay. So anyway, that's what I want you to do. So that's if I come back over here, right? So the idea is I want you to pass it sender receiver, handle if invalid emails, and I put emails here because you're sending it a sender or receiver. And if it's valid, then just console log out something simple. If you want to do a little more here, which I think is good and fun, and we learn more about this later, because that's one of the benefits of Node, is that being able to write to a file. When I say local here, most likely setting out on a server, but for our purposes, setting locally, right? And I want you to attempt this work without looking at my code and then not looking at other students' code. So, it's like I'm saying in the challenges, because the only way you're going to know if you have been able to successfully, let me go back here, actually, and here. The only way you really know how well you're getting these concepts is actually to attempt it without looking at somebody else's code. Now, it's not wrong to look at somebody else's. It's just a way that you can kind of check yourself. And then in your reply here, because you can reply to the JS knowledge one. or on the email one, you could kind of split it. Like I like you to write 150 words and do 2 replies to these, but you could, cover one topic or the other. But if you do, and this is the point of just being open and honest and clear about it, it's like, no, you know what? I was really wanting to look at some code because I didn't quite understand. Say that, right? Because maybe it is that my instructions weren't great. You didn't understand what we were going for. That's why I actually showed you at least most of it so you have an idea. But, if you do, just say you did. Just say, yeah, I needed to look at it, but I got it. And when you write it for your own self, right? Because what you're learning to do, and this is an important part, is you're learning to express your thoughts in code. So take that time to think about, how would I handle, right? And again, I'm going to create a function because, again, if you come in with programming knowledge, which is assumed you have, you should be able to write a function. You should be able to understand how to pass, how to handle the arguments, with parameters and arguments, and how to then have your code be conditional, that if it's valid, you console log out something. If it's not valid, you console log out a message, right? And that's where it gets fun to kind of use the colors. So that's what I want you to do. We will be working through this for the next couple weeks. Do know that I want you to start, and probably next week I'll have you do this, is start thinking about what you're going to create. And I actually think next week maybe I'll pull up some examples, at least what I've done for this class, and some well, specifically we'll talk about this class because where we're going to do our first code review, our first develop it project. I'll have to review again the concepts that we've covered. So I hope you're enjoying Andrew's course. This first section is just like, how do we set up the file? How do we modularize our code? How do we install npm modules? What is the package.json? Why do we need it? Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of, from a larger standpoint. All right, so I will write a little more here saying you write 150 words either on splitting between the two, and then do 2 replies. And enjoy, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.